All right, hello YouTube. I hope we are live. Let me make sure on my YouTube page. I also made sure to make sure my mic was working, so I'm not muted this time. I know I always screw up on that, but I think we are good to go. So, welcome. We're going to be doing a House of the Dragon Season 1 kind of retrospective. And the reason I wanted to do this season is, or not this season, but I wanted to do this stream is more or less predicated on the idea that I hadn't really watched House of the Dragon Season 1 since it came out last, I believe it was August, beginning of August. And I wanted to go back through the series, kind of knowing what was going to happen, and just going through as a second viewing. Maybe picking up on things that I didn't previously pick up the first time, which I don't think I really had a lot of that. Just because when I was doing those House of the Dragon reviews, I was basically pausing after every single scene. I wasn't watching it completely through, and then taking notes after. So I was doing it more of like a scene plays, and then I write down notes for it, and then I would do that as my streams. That's how I would do it. But this one, we're going to kind of go through it, and we're going to talk about, I guess, how this season went, and what could be improved in the next season of House of the Dragon, and some of the pitfalls and decisions that they made in this season that could affect season 2. Hi Evie, how are you? Always start early? Yes, I always do. Always start about 5 minutes early, as you guys know. Hi Matthew, hi Violet, and General Kenobi, yes. But I want to just start by saying House of the Dragon, I really do like the show, and even though I do have issues with writing decisions or the way they took certain characters, I do like the show for the most part. I think it's one of the better shows that I've watched in the last couple years, and I think it deserves a lot of its flowers. And personally, I'm trying to get my thoughts together as I see Matthew put in chat, yo yo yo, Rhaenyra's a ho ho ho, green team. Yeah, you know what's funny? So I'm going to talk about this in this stream, is that when I really watched the early parts of this season, Alicent is a character that I'm really not supposed to like because a major Team Black, Rhaenyra, big fan. She is my favorite Targaryen in the lore, and Alicent to me, until, and I say this all the time, until about episode 8, is probably right there with Viserys as the best written character in the entire show. She has so many conflicting and interesting ideas that you put yourself in her position, and it's interesting to see what you would do. And I think that's my biggest gripe with season 1, is the way Alicent's character was treated, because the writers do such a great job of slowly building her character and developing her relationship with people like the Clubfoot, like Rhaenyra, like Otto, like Viserys, that when you finally get to episode 8, and it's kind of the culmination of all of these things that they're seeing throughout the season, and something we have to keep in mind that these are years. There are years between a lot of these episodes. The story kind of backpedals, and that's my biggest issue. And yeah, I don't know. So we'll talk about that, but I'm going to go forward with episode 1, and we'll kind of get to that later part of the season. Team Daemon, love to see that. I'm not a huge fan of Daemon. I mean, I like Matt Smith, but I think some of the choices they made with his character made me not like him as much as I probably should, based upon my Fire and Blood knowledge of the character. Hi Ashley, how are you? I know you're going to have some bold opinions in this stream. I did know that Lord Hightower is played by that, yes. I think I was told that in the past. Reading the books for the 10th time. Love to see that, EB. Hi, Metal. I need to move my laptop, because reading chat, I gotta look so far over. Hold on. But yeah, hi, Metal. You are a bold one? Maybe. They made her kind of dumb. It was so annoying. I agree. I mean, I wouldn't even say that she's dumb. I would say she is more or less this character that, as the episodes go on, right, whether that's episode 5, episode 6, episode 7, it shows us that Alicent is willing to commit more and more violence or shady stuff to get what she wants. Right, remember, Clubfoot literally kills and murders Lionel Strong and Harwin And Allison maybe directly didn't order it, but she kind of like implied that she wanted that to kind of happen so that Otto could come back. And she knows that Clubfoot did it, and she kind of just doesn't say anything. So again, it goes on that idea that Alicent is willing to slowly do things that get her more power or help her personally. And that's kind of what I thought the idea was with Alicent, is that it wasn't going to be this character shift that she just all of a sudden becomes this badass that she is in Fire and Blood, where she just becomes the complete control and master of the green side of things with a character like Otto. They go a completely different route, and I feel like it takes away from the buildup of her character. Because for me, I know a lot of people will say their favorite moment of season 1 was, let's say, for instance, Vagar and Aemond, right? And how he kills Luke. Or maybe it's the Black Council. Maybe it's this or that. Maybe it's Viserys' heroic moment. For me, as a standalone moment, and for not looking at what comes next, my favorite moment in the entire season is actually when Alicent has her walk at Rhaenyra's feast. It's not really supposed to be for her wedding. It's supposed to be 7 days of feasting and then a marriage. But that feast where Viserys is giving the speech and then he's cut off by Alicent coming in, it's like that perfect culmination of the first 5 episodes for her character. And I love that moment of Alicent kind of coming into her own and her moment. And that moment kind of feels like it's kind of held down a little bit because of how she starts to act in episode 9 and 10. The pacing of House of the Dragon was bad. Could have really been good having 2 more episodes. I agree, showing Harwin and Rhaenyra's relationship, and yes, I completely agree, and that's something that is going to impact one of the episodes because of the idea that Laena is perceived, and her death, when we get later on into the show, it kind of rings hollow in episode 6 because her death is this big emotional moment, but us as the audience, Laena's not really a character. She's someone that as a book reader, it maybe hits me a bit different because I understand who this character is, but for a casual audience, kind of comes off very flat. And that's because there wasn't that build-up episode in there to kind of help that. And then Rhaenyra and Harwin is another thing where episode 6 to me had such a hard job because it had to introduce all of these new characters, all of these relationships that happened off screen, that I agree there. It was so silly that all season we saw Alicent preparing Aegon to usurp Rhaenyra. Then in episode 8, she's shocked that there's a plot to use Aegon to usurp Rhaenyra. Exactly. It doesn't really make any sense. And actually, I think you're talking more on episode 9, the Green Council episode. But yeah, no, I completely agree. It doesn't really make any sense looking at the context of what's been going on. I mean, there's multiple scenes of Alicent training Aegon to be this king and to be not dishonoring their family, right? Where he's literally masturbating out of, a window, basically. And he's sexually assaulting women. Alicent is trying to make it to where he looks like a good figure to be king. And she constantly says, Rhaenyra will kill you. You have to be the person that becomes king, or else she's going to kill you. And that's another thing that I love about episode 5. Episode 5 did a lot of things right in the small moments, and then it got ruined by the end of it. But there are things that I love about this show, that it does a lot of the small moments, especially early on to the mid part of the season, really, really well. And I noted when I did my reread and I was writing down my notes for this, the first 2 hours and 50 minutes of this show are, I think, really good. I think there's not a lot of big moments going on in the first 2 hours and 50 minutes. So that's really the first 2 episodes, and then right before the Stepstone stuff in episode 3. A lot of this is fantastic. It's a lot of showing what our characters are about, the dynamics between characters, and then you do have these mini reveals, like Daemon not being the heir, Rhaenyra becoming the heir, and we have Alicent having to, or I guess not having to, but marrying Viserys. there's a lot of great stuff early on in this show that really are great. So I loved that aspect of it. But yeah, I think as the show went on, it really struggled to hit on the big moments. A lot of the big payoffs. I constantly on my reread felt like we had 40 minutes of just great build-up, great imagery, great world building, just to get to the last 10 to 15 minutes, and then something to just be very questionable or fall flat. And it's a shame, because this season, if you look at 90% of this season, in my opinion, it's pretty good. But then there's that 10%. But the problem with that 10% is it's a lot of the big moments, the moments that stick with you, right? Rhaenys bursting through the ground is a moment that sticks with you, and it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Let me read chat real quick. They should have started the show with Viserys' death. I can see why you would do that, Jesse, personally, just because I am such a Fire and Blood fanboy. I liked seeing a lot of the stuff before Viserys' death. I just wish we had gotten more time to explore. Hi, Ghost, how are you? I would have liked that slow build-up, but they completely took away her agency. I agree. My favorite scene had to be the Last Supper scene. That's a good one as well, Ghost. I can definitely see that. Alicent's green dress scene was my favorite as well. Love to see that. I thought that was a great moment. It encapsulates Alicent's arc for the first 5 episodes, and when we have this idea of, it doesn't feel like it's out of left field that Alicent is just turned. And I think even when I first was reviewing the show, I kind of looked over the fact of how Alicent was being manipulated. Otto is straight up telling Alicent, do you trust Rhaenyra? Like, if Rhaenyra comes to the throne, she could view your children as a threat and kill them. And Alicent, at the beginning of episode 5, is like, no, Rhaenyra would never do that, right? She's my friend, and she, we might have our differences, but she would never do that. I trust her. And what is great about this is that we see that gets flipped, because Alicent figures out that Rhaenyra is lying to her, again, being manipulated a little bit by Clubfoot. We see that it makes perfect sense as to why Alicent now flips, because of what Otto has told her, because of not having any trust in Rhaenyra now over something like that. It makes a lot of sense as to why she now comes into her own and kind of views herself as being, I guess, the representative of Hightower and for her children. The whole season doesn't make much sense. I can see where you're coming from now on that, Jesse, but I think the first half of the season is actually pretty good. I think they do mess some things up. One of my biggest complaints that just doesn't make any sense logically is that, I guess, when I first watched this show, I don't remember on my actual analysis of episode 5, I didn't remember that Kristen Cole actually hits Laenor. And the fact that Kristen Cole, at the very least, didn't lose a hand because of that, when Laenor's becoming the king consort, we know how prideful Corlys is. The fact that Kristen Cole doesn't get any repercussions, and this moment is never brought up again, is mind-blowing to me. And it's one of those mistakes that just seems like it's so easy to fix. Have Kristen Cole kill Joffrey in the hallway where nobody sees him. Have it be like it is in the book. It doesn't make any sense to me why they changed that. I just can't see any reason as to why they changed it that way. And the only thing I can think of is they needed this wedding to live up to Game of Thrones standards of weddings having something crazy happen. And to me, it's like the Alicent payoff and the green dress scene was enough. It's this dividing of the borders of the blacks and the greens. You didn't need this moment where there was just some random violence that didn't make any sense. That was one of my biggest problems. Because other things I can see why they did it, like the Laenor thing. I can't judge it too harshly because we don't know where they're going with that plot. But as of right now, it's very questionable. The Vagar and Aemon thing, where it was an accident, I can see where they're going with that. I might not like it as much as the alternative, but I see where they're going. But that was a mistake that just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I know Aegon wasn't that good in the books, but I don't think he was a damn rapist. Yeah, Aegon's a weird character, with how they interpreted him from the book to here. Because they kind of give Aegon like the Daemon treatment. They give Aegon a lot of negative qualities that make him look completely incompetent, for one. Two, he's a rapist. Three, he just is not a good, he's a drunk, basically. Aegon's a very weird character. And then by the end of it, they try to make him more sympathetic and likable. Saying that he's had all this pressure put on him, and that Alicent hasn't really been a great mother, and Viserys was never a great father to him as well. And it just rings hollow when we remember in the episode before, he was literally a rapist. He was literally like raped a woman. Like, it's so weird. I don't know. Another thing, okay, so this is another thing that Joanna brings up, or Joanna, sorry if I mispronounce your name, brings up that I think is really interesting. How does Aegon father these bastards? Because we see that it's very apparent that Alicent gives the tea to all these people that Aegon apparently rapes. So how does he have bastards? I think that's an interesting point in the show to look at. Maybe there's some people that Alicent doesn't know about, but I think that's hard to believe, especially when Clubfoot and Mysaria are around. I think that's kind of difficult, but I don't know. Where do you think the show ends? So this is a spoiler for anyone that doesn't want to be spoiled about House of the Dragon. But I think they should probably end with Aegon III, basically being made the king. Wasn't that Mushroom's claim or something? It probably was. I couldn't exactly tell you on that. And Aegon being a whiny baby. Agreed. So she was always planning to use her son to undercut Rhaenyra. I just don't understand the maker. So, okay. I think the idea of why is a tough one for me, because at the end of episode 8, Alicent at this dinner basically has a complete change of heart and is like, Rhaenyra, you'll be a good queen, and all of it. And the problem is, it just doesn't feel like there was enough there for me for Alicent to, after years and years and years of plotting, of hating Rhaenyra, and the issues the two went through, that because Rhaenyra says, oh yeah, you've been a good loving wife to Viserys, and giving Alicent some compliments, she all of a sudden is like, you know what? Yeah, that's enough. Because again, we have to remember, the whole idea with episode 5 is to prove to Alicent that Rhaenyra is not trustworthy, that her children could be in danger. So why does Alicent all of a sudden change her mind? And we also have to remember that, given the context of episode 8, Alicent was literally about to, if there was no intervening from Viserys, Alicent was about to basically destroy Rhaenyra's claim to the throne. She was about to literally go, yeah, Rhaenyra, all your children are bastards because we're not having Luke become the person in charge of Driftmark after Corlys dies. That basically says that Rhaenyra, all of your children are illegitimate, and that you basically were whoring around inside a marriage with Laenor, and that completely destroys Rhaenyra and her claim. It's still there because Viserys says that she is, but it makes a much easier time for the Greens. So how does she go from that, Alicent being willing to do that, to where she all of a sudden now, I guess, trusts Rhaenyra enough to let her be queen? Because again, we know the thing that sets her over the edge is her final meeting with Viserys. And even then, it doesn't really, like, what Viserys says, basically he's like, the prince that was promised, and then says Aegon's dream, And somehow Alicent says, "Oh yeah, Aegon should be king." It's just a really odd flip to now Alicent's like, "Okay, Aegon should be king again." It just makes Alicent very indecisive, and it makes her kind of the exact opposite of the character she had been built up to. And by the time we get into the early stages of episode 8, Alicent's completely taken over King's Landing. She's the person in charge. She's the one ruling at this point. She's this very smart, and it would appear decisive character, and she kind of just gets a reversal of that. And I hate that. And I don't know, it just feels like they threw away a lot of what had been built up. Hold on, let me go back up. And I also hate how they're making Daemon seem like a terrible person. Well, it's not seem like. In the show, Daemon is a bad person. He's an entertaining person to watch on screen. I can like his character, or the character he represents in the story, but no, he's a bad dude. Like, Daemon is a terrible person in the show. It's not debatable. It's not like Fire and Blood where, like, there's a lot of intrigue surrounding Daemon as a character. He's just an absolute shitter in the show. I think it's very possible, Mystery, that we could. All right, catching the stream early this time. What's up, my friends? Hi, Casper. How are you? I still can't believe Alicent was that mad over her friend getting laid. Well, Ashley, see, this is the thing that I was there with you on what you were talking about. But I think the idea is not that she's mad about Rhaenyra having sex. I think the idea is, one, Alicent is angry within herself because she wasn't allowed to be like Rhaenyra. That's one of the clear contrasts between Alicent and Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra has a lot of freedoms. Viserys is quite the opposite of Otto. Viserys allows Rhaenyra to pick who she's going to marry and all of these things, and Rhaenyra gets away with a lot because Viserys is her father. Otto forces Alicent to basically try and marry Viserys. Alicent doesn't get a lot of what Rhaenyra is allowed to get away with. And that is something that angers her. Now, the other thing that makes Alicent really angry is that when Rhaenyra does actually lie to Alicent, or I guess not tell her the full truth, is more the wording we should use there. Rhaenyra sees it as the trust is, or Alicent sees it as the trust has been broken. So I do understand why Alicent is mad, and I think it really goes into who she is as a character of following the rules and following what your father wants you to do. Hi Zen, how are you? The biggest Achilles heel for the show is the time jump period. Nothing. I agree that is a big issue. It created a lot of situations like we've talked about with relationships with Harwin and Rhaenyra, and Laena and Daemon. There's other things that just we didn't get to see develop. So one, this is a minor complaint, is that in between episode 2 and 3, we never really got to see a conversation between Alicent and Rhaenyra talking about what happened, like with Alicent marrying Rhaenyra's father. Sorry, I had to drink my tea. We never saw that conversation, and there were so many things that hurt this show when it came to building characters. Another aspect we could see is just the time skip kind of hurt the Stepstones plot. It's one of my favorite plots in the Dance of the Dragons era. And it really builds up Corlys and Daemon as generals, and these people that are the reason the Blacks have an advantage militarily when it comes to leadership. And just there's things like that littered throughout the entire series, and it's something that should be inherently fixed in season 2 because there shouldn't really be any time jumps. So that should be solved hopefully for season 2. I don't think the show wanted to do another tourney after the first one. And that's fine, Ghost. But there needs to be a reason that Joffrey dies and it makes sense. Because Kristen Cole just openly killing him And again, from an outsider's point of view, a bystander, from Viserys' point of view, this is an unprovoked attack that Kristen Cole just beat the living shit out of Joffrey. And then also hit Laenor. Again, remember, Laenor is now royalty. He is marrying into royalty. He is marrying the person that is going to sit the Iron Throne, presumably. The fact that Kristen Cole has no consequences from this, and it's never brought up, it's not really even a big part of Kristen Cole's character moving forward in the show, doesn't make any sense. And it really adds like kind of the late season Game of Thrones feeling where things don't have consequences, and it's just a big misfire. It would have made sense if Cole killed Joffrey at the tournament. The show version makes no sense. Yeah, I completely agree. Would have loved to see. Hold on. Would have loved to see Kristen or Sir Christian beat Harwin and kill Joffrey and Attorney better. I agree. I kind of find it hard to believe that the Viserys they made would be a bad fighter to Aegon. I don't think would be bad. So, Viserys to me is an interesting, like, father figure to Alicent's children because the show really doesn't show Viserys being a father figure to any of the three. And I don't think he was a father or bad father as in like a Tywin type thing. But I feel like the show makes to where Viserys wasn't really present like very often in their bringing up. And I think Alicent, the way we see Alicent being a bad, I think, mother is kind of forcing her children, and I mean specifically Aegon, into having to be king, having to be this person that he doesn't want to be, he's not fit to be. And I think that's one idea. Now, the other idea would be pushing her children to blood, like hating Rhaenyra's children. And we see how Kristen Cole trains them. That's an apparent theme there. Did Aegon even have bastards in the books? Officially, that we know of, I don't believe so. He could have had some, but I don't recollect him actually having any. But yeah, like Matthew says, it's possible because he did have lust, but it's never really confirmed that he did. So I am gonna go with no on that. He is a rapist, but that doesn't mean he never had consensual sex. In no way Alicent knows about everyone he has been with. That's true, Jaehaerys. That could be why. That could be why. Mysare's operative was the handmaiden Alicent instructed to make the tea, so she could have essentially brewed. That is also true. That's a great point. That does make more sense. I think the Targaryens having bastards is an ongoing theme. It's just surprising to me that in the current timeline we don't see any half Targaryens roaming around Westeros. That's a great point, Zen. That's a great point. The only thing about the Greens is Rhaenyra's kids with Daemon, because even if Jace and Luke are bastards, Aegon and Viserys are trueborn children of Daemon and Rhaenyra. That's a good point as well. And I don't know. I mean, I think that's a great point. And that's one of the reasons that Rhaenyra does marry Daemon. It gives her claim a lot more legitimacy just based upon Daemon being in that line of succession as well. At the Hunt episode, Viserys tells Alicent about dreaming of a son as heir. It's the same one he tells Emma about in episode 1. Alicent probably thought that was Aegon's dream Viserys was referring to. That's a great point, Mystery. That's something I didn't actually consider. But I could maybe see that, but it does seem like, in my opinion, it still seems like a stretch. Just looking at the idea that Viserys quite literally just saved Rhaenyra in this episode, it seems like a stretch that all of a sudden Viserys is going to say that Aegon is the king. So I think that's a bit of a stretch, but I do think that's a very interesting point you bring up. Fair enough, Casper. That's a her problem, not a Rhaenyra problem. Fair enough. To me, Daemon is a great character. He cares a lot about his family, but at the same time is willing to kill anyone who gets in his way. This is what... So, Daemon in the show is a very weird character. Because I get what you're saying, Evie, but when we look at Damon, all he does is he creates problems for his family. And he chokes out Rhaenyra, so I can't really make the argument that he does love his family a lot. Maybe Viserys, but then even his own daughters at times he's very neglectful of. So I don't know. Daemon is a very hard character for me to place. I also hate how the show also paints the picture that the Greens is the only side that is power hungry and evil, while in the books it was shown that both sides were not entirely good. But okay, so Ghost, this is a major issue I have, where in I believe it's episode 6. Yeah, it's episode 6, where Rhaenyra does this idea of, hey, Alicent, let's marry our children. Okay? And that'll fix the issue. And Alicent doesn't agree to it. And again, I see why Alicent doesn't. And I think that makes a lot of sense for her position to not take that deal. But at the same time, what this does that maybe the writers didn't really think about is that, yes, it makes sense in the context of Alicent not making this deal. But what it does is it dramatically shifts, I guess, the blame and which side is the good side, which side is the bad side. Because when we think about all of these events that happen in Season 2, Season 3, Season 4, we can always circle back that Rhaenyra gave the option to Alicent to end this, to not have this conflict even happen. And it was a good, fair deal. And that's my issue with it, is that the show constantly puts Rhaenyra in the favorable position as the good or hero character, and constantly puts all of the bad or power-hungry characters on the green side of things. And they kind of have power-hungry people on the black side with Daemon and Corlys, but it's not nearly to the extent that we see the Hightowers or Clubfoot or other characters like that. And that's a major issue, because the whole idea and what makes the conflict of the Dance of the Dragons very interesting is that in the book, if you asked, just based off of Fire and Blood, what side you supported, the black side or the green side, I think majority of people, or not majority, that was going to be show, I think it'd be a lot more split on which side you liked, whereas the show, I think it's very one-sided. I think you can like elements of characters on the other side, like Aemond, but I think most people probably believe in the black side, and that's not really how it's supposed to be. I think it's interesting that the show didn't touch the rumors about Daemon being Alicent's, or Daemon taking Alicent's Maidenhead. Would have made, this is something I thought was really weird, Ashley, because they kind of do a little bit of a wink to it, where Daemon basically has Alicent's favor in the tourney we see in episode 1. They don't really do anything with it. It's kind of like a wink to book fans, but nothing really comes out of it. I agree, that would have been interesting to have seen, Ashley. I'm going to quit House of the Dragon if Helena's kids end up being Aemon's. Yeah, I would rather them be Aegon's. But they do heavily imply that Aemond is the one that actually likes his sister. But I don't know. Yeah, they did. Yeah, that is a big issue with Daemon, is they deleted a lot of his scenes, and that it just paints him in a bad light to me. Um, let's not forget, Viserys was high out of his mind when he told Alicent about the promised prince for the last time. How on earth? Again, that's another thing, is Viserys is on his deathbed. Like, you just basically gave him drugs, basically, so the pain and all that feeling is in his body so he can sleep. Why all of a sudden would it just... I agree with you, Ashley. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Alicent saying no to the marriage makes a lot of sense. Jace's claim would have definitely been questioned, and Helena would have likely always been in danger. And I kind of agree with that sentiment, but I think even more from Allison's point of view. Think about it, right? Allison's whole idea and character in that episode is that Rhaenyra is getting away with breaking these laws and these rules that she shouldn't be able to get away with. And two, if you look at the way Allison feels about Rhaenyra in this episode, again, not trusting Rhaenyra and understanding, because Allison basically figures this out perfectly. She literally says it, that this is a move made out of desperation, which is what it is. Rhaenyra kind of feels the walls pushing in on her, and that's why she makes that whole idea, or that plan. So again, I think from Allison's side, it makes perfect sense why she denies it. My issue is not that part of it. My issue is the impact it has on how we choose which side is morally good in this regard. House of Dragon can sometimes feel like a Fire and Blood fanfic. I definitely see what you would say, why you would say that, Violet. And so the good and bad of Fire and Blood is that no story is truly just false. Like, you can really spin any type of show about the Dance of the Dragons in any way you really want, as long as it makes sense to the events that are concrete, that we know happen. You can really go any way with it. Like, you could have written this show from an entirely green side of point of view, where you skew how events happen, not show us things, and that completely makes sense. And House of the Dragon just does too many things that completely don't make sense with how Fire and Blood is told. So, I don't know. That's true about Laris. Laris does a lot of sketchy shit. And I forgot how much, like, how creepy Laris comes off. Like, in episode, I think 7. Yeah, it's episode 7, and Lena's funeral and all that, where Laris is just, like, in the background just staring at Alicent, and it's just like, I forgot how creepy that dude is. I think it would have been better if that proposal had come from Viserys for the Union. I agree. And then I think, so this is how I think how this could have been done much better, Matthew. Is that one, Alicent doesn't want to do it for the reasons we just talked about. And two, Rhaenyra doesn't want to do it also. Because if you go into Rhaenyra's mind, Rhaenyra could maybe be looking at this idea that, why should I be having to marry Alicent's children when my children are already legit, and that I am going to sit the throne? Why I should be able to marry these children to other people to gain more of an alliance. I think it makes more sense having both of the characters, Alicent and Rhaenyra, their hatred of each other at this point, and their own ideologies, to both reject the offer. So, I don't know. Rhaenyra is my favorite character in Fire and Blood, but she has flaws which they didn't put in the show, though the main they took from the books is the love of her children. Yeah, I agree with you, Evie. I am completely with you. Rhaenyra is my favorite character. And the Rhaenyra that I love as a character and the way she is written in Fire and Blood, from what we know of, is not the character in House of the Dragon. They're two very separate people. Rhaenyra is a character that we don't see that vulnerability. Like, in episode 8, when Rhaenyra kind of breaks down to Viserys, and it's a good scene for how the show has portrayed Rhaenyra, but that is not something present in the Rhaenyra at that time in Fire and Blood. Rhaenyra is a character that's very defensive, and she's quick to anger because of some of the things she's gone through, and because of the pressure and constantly people telling her that she won't become this person on the throne. When Vaemon does his treason, Rhaenyra doesn't second guess it. Like, she just tells Daemon, go get this dude and kill him. It's a completely different side of Rhaenyra. We don't see a lot of Rhaenyra's flaws, and hopefully they dive into a lot more of those into season 2, and I think they hopefully will. But it is really disappointing, and it's why Rhaenyra is not a character that I view as being one of the best in season 1. She just isn't. I think she's above average. I think she's good at times, but they just didn't go the extra mile. They were scared of making a character that people might compare to later Game of Thrones Dany. That's true, but she's gonna wish she had taken the deal when she's locked in that room. Yep. Laris is the rats theory. Yes, you are correct. Don't you worry about it being one-sided once Rat and Cheese come into play. No way will anyone emphasize with Rhaenyra any longer, especially that Luke died by accident. No, I disagree, Zen. I completely disagree. I see what you're saying, where it's like, oh, Rhaenyra is doing this intentionally, right? She's intentionally trying to do this. But when you look at everything that's led up to this moment, right, where Rhaenyra has been the only one of the two sides that has really tried to end the conflict, and Alicent is the one that, again, betrays Rhaenyra, because apparently they had the conflict figured out at the end of episode 8. Alicent flips. And let's also remember, Aemond publicly is probably going to claim that he killed Luke on purpose. The Greens, regardless of if it was an accident, it wasn't an accident, in the show it's an accident, they took first blood. So, no, I don't think it's going to just flip all of a sudden. I already think it's one-sided to the blacks. Maybe that's my own bias, but I don't know. And to think that some are comparing Laris to Littlefinger and Varys. Yeah, Littlefinger and Varys, to me, are just playing a way different game. They don't come off nearly as creepy as Laris does. People are already justifying Blood and Cheese, so I don't doubt any sympathy. Yeah, and it's just the idea that, look at, like, Rhaenyra as a character compared to, like, Alicent or Otto. Like, they've already done, like, bad things. It's more like Blood and Cheese is going to maybe try and level the playing field, but I don't think it's going to. I just don't. I don't know. I think Vaemond had to have been given assurances that the Driftmark secession would go in his favor for him to have turned up there in the first place. I agree. And that Alicent was deliberately keeping Viserys drugged up in hopes he'd miss it and she'd be running the meeting. Agreed. It's a little interesting that Otto and Alicent don't try. Like, I know Otto tries to give him, like, there's a scene right before Viserys does his big, like, walk or whatever, where Viserys basically says no on giving the drink. But you would have thought, like, they would have, like, been a little bit more sly. Maybe I mean, to be fair, in Viserys' condition, it's extremely difficult for him to actually even get to the throne room, but missed most of the chat, just arrived, so glad they moved the battle to season 3. Hi, Jim. And I don't know, I still don't know how I feel, because they just have a lot they have to do in season 2, and it being 8 episodes scares me. It does. I don't know. Because, like, I just look at this season, and I'm not fearful of how they're able to write and do the small parts of the story correct. It's the big moments that scare me with this story, and not having enough time to develop the story. And Jim, I get what you're saying, and I think a lot of people have said that well, whereas it's like they're slowing down the story a bit. But how is season 2 going to complete arcs? I don't know. Is it just me that sees Otto as a good guy? In House of the Dragon, I really don't see Otto as a good guy. I think you could say he's morally gray. He tries to gain power for his family. He's very oriented. And I don't. I think he is involved with a lot of shady shit going on in King's Landing. He does things that are for his own benefit, not for the kingdom's or even Viserys' benefit as a whole, like Viserys even calls out. I don't think he's a bad guy necessarily. I think he's more or less a morally gray character, and one of the very few I think that the show actually has done correctly. But I agree, Matthew. I think to me, it's not as much as I'm worried about the time skips or like how that. I think the things that scare me is that in season one that they showed, they were very apparent with making like changes from Fire and Blood, doing things that are not even like hinted or rumored at in the book. And that scares me for things that they could do in the show that would damage characters building. They've already, in my opinion, they haven't ruined, like I talked about in this stream. It's been a large focus of it, of Alicent as a character. For me, they've almost completely broken her as a character already, to where I don't know how you like recover. Like how does Alicent go forward now being a character that I feel like is justified in her development now? I don't know how they do that. Rhaenyra as a character, I hold a lot of high hopes for. I hope that they can continue to develop and dive deeper into her as a character, because that they now know House of the Dragon was a major success. How are they going to be able to build upon that character and use her rage, use her sadness for losing Luke and other things like that? How are they going to play on that? Playing on Daemon, seeing him being a military commander, and hopefully they avoid doing cheesy battles like the Stepstones. Like, hopefully they avoid very illogical things happening. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting idea. What actor would you fan cast as Craig and Stark? I have no idea. Mystery, people ask me like fan cast all the time, and I don't know. Whoever does the best job can have it. Yep, I agree, Ghost. I think that is exactly how people will see Blood and Cheese. I 110% agree, because in the book, you've already seen signs in the book that Rhaenyra and Daemon are willing to get their hands dirty and do some evil stuff. And the book, it's like you have a balancing out between both sides, right? Both sides are doing evil actions. They're involved with some real sketchy stuff. And in the show, it doesn't really feel like that to me. But I don't know. Some people might be different there. It wouldn't have changed anything if Aemon was honest and said it was an accident. No one would believe him, and it would make him and the Greens and common and small folk would say it's a sign from the gods. Agreed. The only motive I see that Otto has is to not let Daemon be in power over the realm, in which he is correct. If he was corrupt, you wouldn't see him be loyal to Viserys, not spare Rhaenyra many times. So, this is where I will completely go against you on that, Zen, is that Otto is completely working against Viserys. Viserys wants Rhaenyra on the throne, and what does Otto try to do for upwards of 7 episodes? Completely working against that. Putting his daughter and his daughter's children in power. What is he doing when Viserys is getting older, right? He's basically helping Alicent completely take over and make it a green court all against Rhaenyra. Otto is this character that, again, is very self-interested. And also, let's keep in mind, Otto has no problem with just straight up murdering Rhaenyra and all of these characters. So, I don't know. And that's also another idea, is that Otto is this character that shifts his loyalties constantly. First, he's like, yeah, Rhaenyra should be the heir over Daemon because he doesn't like Daemon, because Daemon calls out Otto for his bullshit, and Daemon is correct. And then what does he do? He works to get someone married to Viserys, Alicent, who is related to him, so that her children can usurp Rhaenyra. That's his goal from the get-go. It's hard to say that he like has no motive that he does. Um, it would have been much more powerful if we saw Alicent and Rhaenyra's regret over their rivalry after the dance. I 110% agree, Andrew. That would have made a lot more sense. Like seeing a conversation, say late in the season or the last season, where they both sit down and just think about what happened and how this all could have been avoided, would have made more sense because the tragedy that this conflict brought to both of them is now weighing heavily on them. There really wasn't anything for them to just all of a sudden regret their like hatred of each other early on. Another thing that makes no sense, Otto going to Dragonstone. Yeah, doesn't make any sense. It's something I kind of overlook in episode, I think it's 2, that, yeah, it is episode 2 now I'm thinking about it. It's episode 2, that I'm like, it doesn't really make any sense, like, why Otto would go. He doesn't have a dragon. Daemon could very easily just get on Caraxes and burn the shit out of whoever he brings there. But that is also the other issue of the Targaryen power at that point. They didn't really have a lot of dragon riders. So, I don't know. I kind of give him a pass for that one. But yeah, like, what was Otto going to do? Like, I don't know. Also, it's possible Daemon took Alicent's maidenhead, so it's possible that the real reason he hates him is for soiling his daughter. That is true. We just don't have any evidence in the show, like, outside of Daemon and Alicent, like, kind of having a little cute moment in episode 1. But Otto is a badass going to Dragonstone himself. Yeah, I would agree. I think he more or less went there because he didn't want Viserys and Daemon interacting, or Daemon trying to kill Viserys. But, you know. That's another great point that you bring up, Ashley, that Otto could have been going there because Daemon is not going to accept any type of negotiations. So, if that is true, like, what conflict could that have brewed? That's another great point. But moving on, I mean, season 2 has a lot it has to do. Because, one, we're going to get this journey of Jace going to not only the north, but also the Vale. And we have Daemon in the Riverlands and that entire plot. There's so many things going on there. We then have Daeron, who is going to be at Old Town. So there's a lot going on here. Plus the Green plot in King's Landing going on with Aemond and how we're going to see that be resolved. Rhaenyra at Dragonstone, how that is going to continue. And also, you know, without getting into too many spoilers, we're going to see how do you use a dragon in warfare. That is, to me, the most intriguing part of the Dance of the Dragons that we see. And the main conflict, without really spoiling a lot, is what do you do if someone is using a dragon on one of your bannermen? What do you do? Because you either are forced to defend your bannermen, which again makes sense, but then if you don't, it's like, well, this person isn't defending me, so should I switch sides? It's a great usage of the dragons, and it's why the dragons are so important. Because a normal army can't have that effect. You know, they can siege something, but they can't burn a castle to the ground. And I love that element, and I'm interested to see how they, you know, start to use that in season 2 and even further in. Isn't it weird how the only dragon we see on the green side is Vhagar? Like, I think Aegon's coronation would have been... Yeah, it's really weird that we haven't seen a lot of the dragons on the green side, especially Sunfire, because Sunfire is described so beautifully in the book that I'm really surprised they kind of missed that opportunity to really give us a good scene of Sunfire. But who knows? I also agree with you on Andor. Yeah, I don't know. She has made a lot of questionable decisions. I'll just leave it at that. Jace plot, Green Targ plot, Rhaenyra plot, Daron plot, and Dan plot. Yeah, I agree, Mystery, and there's a lot to get going. So see, my ideal world is that they would have made this season 10 episodes, but they didn't need, like, the battle that they're talking about, that they moved to season 3. We didn't really need to be at that point yet. Like, we there could have been so much that you discover and go through. Like, we're given a lot in Fire and Blood about the dance as a whole, like way more than a lot of other parts of the book, that you could have taken that information and really dove into the psyche of what's going on, of how Otto Hightower is going to try and help deal with this situation. The idea of the Triarchy and the Dornish who have made some sort of alliance, and all of these things that aren't really like major, I guess, conversations or a lot of information we get in the book, and you could have expanded them and made a lot of this conflict even more interesting. But I don't know. I mean, it's interesting what they're going to have to be able to do with this season. So, I don't know. I hope they can do it justice in the 8 episodes, or I guess, well, they're going to have more than that, but the 8 episodes that the ground they're trying to cover. We'll see. But that is probably going to be the stream for tonight, guys. Unless you guys have anything else you want me to talk about. Oh, hold on. Ashley asked me a question, so I will answer that when I get to it. Hold on. Let me go ahead and look at that real quick. And then we'll finish out with that. So, Ashley asked, or I guess put into chat, maybe this wasn't exactly a question. I just rewatched Rhaenyra's coronation scene and noticed how the cameras keyed in on Daemon and Rhaenys' face when Sir Eric presented Viserys' crown. Given that Daemon and Rhaenys had their rights to that crown taken from them, it would have been cool to have a quick scene between the two after the coronation, maybe in Valyrian, acknowledging how difficult it was to watch someone else get what should have been theirs appearing okay with it. Or while appearing okay with it. Yeah, that's an interesting idea, and maybe we could get a scene with that in the next season, Ashley. But I think the idea here would be, when you look at Daemon, is this person that, given the laws and precedents set by the Great Council, Daemon should have been the legit heir after, or I guess not after, but during that entire period where Viserys had only Rhaenyra as an heir, or as a child, because the male president does take over from the female in this world. And it is interesting the way Daemon could have, like, viewed that. Even though Daemon is going to be the king consort at this point, it is interesting to note, like, that at one point, if things had gone differently, Daemon could have been that heir, and could have maybe been the king at some point. And then Rhaenys, I think Rhaenys is a bit different, because Rhaenys, we have so many conversations with her, or not so many, I wish we had more, but we have a couple conversations with her and Corlys, and Rhaenys at this point, I think, has just given up on any of that idea. And I think she's happy and sad for Rhaenyra, because Rhaenyra is getting to kind of live and be praised at what Rhaenys would have been at one point. And I think Rhaenys understands the conflict Rhaenyra is going to face with the idea of being a woman on the throne. So I think that's going to be an interesting idea that could play into season 2 as well, and something major happening in that season. Maybe they'll do 4 seasons instead of 3. I think they should do 4. Got Dorn still bugs me on how they made them look Arabic. They're supposed to be inspired by Spain. Yes. Yeah, Violet. That would be another interesting scene that hopefully they will do in the show. That'd be a really interesting scene to look at. But yeah, thank you guys all for watching the stream. Hope you all enjoyed our little House the Dragon talk, and I will see you guys all in the next stream. And also, enjoy. You're gonna be getting 2 brand videos this week. I never thought I'd say that. Tomorrow is gonna be brand 3 in the reread, and then Saturday, presumably, I get the video edited quickly enough. Well, me and House of the Stag will be doing a brand, like, Winds of Winter video. So I hope you guys all enjoy that. I'll see you guys all in the